Welcome to the Wizard of Radical Self-Respect. My name is Jared Mello, and I'm the Shepherd of Black Sheep. Today, I'm going to go over the concept of narcissists being crybullies. And first, what is a crybully? A crybully is someone that plays the victim in a situation that they created. As you can see, narcissists love to do this. And a great example of this is if they get caught cheating. If a narcissist gets caught cheating, they have any number of ways they can be a cry bully about the situation. They might say, well, you didn't give me enough attention and affection, so I went off and cheated. Or you didn't do enough around the house. Or you didn't pay enough attention to me. Or you didn't sleep with me enough. And if you would have done that, I wouldn't have cheated. Whatever they do, they act like it's your fault, and then they play the victim. Or they'll say something along the lines of, I guess I'm just the worst, and you really must hate me now, or I can't do anything right. I'm just the worst boyfriend, wife, husband, girlfriend, etc. And they really wallow in a woe's me routine. But in reality, they're just reaping what they have sowed. They cheated on you, and now they're playing the victim. And this is just one very common example of it. Another example would be if they struggle with addictions or drug use, and maybe they get in trouble with the law. Well, they get in trouble with the law, and then they act like it's such an awful thing that they have to pay fines, or they have to do community service, or if they have to do anything else involved with their punishment. But they don't even take into account that they did something they weren't supposed to do. Maybe they were drinking and driving, and then they get a DUI and they've lost their license. And then they'll play the victim about the fact that they lost their license. But this is also just another example of being a crybully. I used the example in one of my shorts about Elon Musk. And what Elon Musk did, I'm not sure if people know this story, but back when he lived in South Africa, Elon Musk would get bullied a lot in school. And he was sharing this in an interview once. I forget who was interviewing him, but what happened was he would say to them, oh, I was really mercifully or ruthlessly bullied in school. And the interviewer was like, okay, what happened? And he said, I was terribly bullied. I was almost beaten within an inch of my life. But then if you examine that story a little bit closer, Ellie, how are you? And then if you examine that story a little bit closer, you hear what happened was Elon Musk was making fun of a kid because the kid's father ended his own life. And Elon Musk was calling the kid's father stupid and making fun of him. And then this kid beat up Elon. And then this is the situation that Elon is playing the victim about. He is being a cry bully. He baited and provoked this kid. And it was very distasteful to make fun of someone because one of their parents ended their own life. And then you're going to make fun of them about it? I mean, how ridiculous is that? Angela, how are you? Welcome to the chat. How are you both doing today? I'm talking about cry bully so far. And if you have any questions about it or any other things you would like to see me talk about, let me know. But it's been a good day. I got delayed. I was actually going to do this stream a little sooner, but I ran into a kid that used to live down the street from me growing up, and I hadn't seen him for years, and he ran into me at the pizza shop. And then we talked for about an hour, or else I was going to start this live stream earlier. But my plan is this: Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And the streams will be Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Occasionally I'll do one on other days as well. But I'm planning for that to be my live stream schedule, give or take, so that you can expect streams from me on those days. And usually 9 to 9:30 start time is what I'm going to shoot for. I'm glad you're here. You're doing great, Angela. And Ellie, what did you think about the Christian interview? But as I talk about the cry bullies, I'm sure you can all think of examples of how you've seen narcissists and even people who are not narcissists, how they have done this in your life. They act like they're the victim, but meanwhile, they really were doing things they weren't supposed to do. They got in trouble, but they really have no one to blame except for themselves. But of course, narcissists don't do that. They are the kings and queens of blaming others. Bear, long time no see, Bear. How are you? And there is nothing more obnoxious when a narcissist does the cry bully routine. And it's because they are hypersensitive to criticism and perceived criticism, which means they have a very difficult time admitting when they've done something wrong or admitting any kind of shortcoming. And it can't be them. They feel very uncomfortable thinking it was them. And their first instinct is to externalize that blame and push it onto someone else. Or at the very least, they want to manage their image and play the victim. But it is really off putting. There's not really any charismatic people that playing the victim is never charismatic. Ellie says, very interesting interview with Christian, many original ideas by him. And the interesting thing about him is he is more environmental focused as opposed to Dr. Salerno. Dr. Salerno is much more genetic focused. Dr. Salerno definitely acknowledges the environmental factor, by the way, but he's just not as environmental focused as Christian is. That's why I wanted to bring him on, to kind of bring a different perspective. And I think a lot of people did like his perspective. Do you have narcissistic parents? I had a dad that was either on the spectrum or narcissistic, and it's even hard for me to tell. And that's one of the reasons why I know what I know. And I'm not no contact with him because he's a rare case where it's improved, where he hasn't, and I don't share this very much because I don't want to give people hope about it, but I haven't gone no contact with him because, sure, it's not perfect, but it's not also horrible either. Like for the most part, it's better. And that's not something that normally happens. And it's one of the things that makes me think maybe it was more the spectrum than narcissism, but some of the behaviors are very, very similar. And it was fairly brutal for a time. And sure, there was environmental stressors as well. And that doesn't excuse anything, but that's kind of where I am with it now. But what's also helped me is I've done healing work about it. I've done the letting go of resentment work. So there's really only one person in the family that I'm no contact from. And that person is just ridiculous. They're the person that's treated me worse than anyone. And they just refuse to respect me and my boundaries. And they left me no choice. And so I did. Others, I have certainly emotionally detached from. I might not be no contact with them, but I wouldn't say I have a very close relationship with them. That's also true. Let's see. Ellie says, I will leave a comment this week on the Christian interview. Yes, please do. Please do. Now, my mother was not that. Now, her mother, on the other hand, I think she was on the spectrum of narcissism. And that's what happened. It was part of the pattern, or that's why my mom got with someone that she got with, and her other sisters got with the people that they got with. You can see the patterns in the family and how you see people that had a narcissistic parent. So often they get with a romantic partner that's a narcissist, unless they're the narcissist themselves. And then they get with someone who is more of a enabler probably, or people pleaser, etc. And you see it. Once you see the pattern, you can't unsee the pattern because it's absolutely everywhere. And I see that all throughout my tree. And overall, just in romantic relationships in general, you see one of two things. There's one person who's usually a little more dominant and one person who is a little more passive. And then there's a person that is more competent. And then there's a person that is a little more free-spirited. Now, sometimes the person who is dominant is also the one that is more competent, but not always. Not always. Sometimes there's someone who's more dominant, but they're out of control. And then they're with someone, ideally, that is a little more competent and kind of reins them in. But that's generally what I see. Angela says, do you think that narcissistic parents treat you as an adult, parentification, or as a child, infantilization, to manipulate you and get what they want? My parents were more of the overprotective variety. And so that was more infantilization. And I did not like that one bit because it was extremely controlling. And I was very embarrassed, for example, that I had stricter rules in high school than a lot of girls had. And to me, I'd never listened to rules. I would just sneak out. I would do what I wanted to do anyway. And they would try and try and try to control me. But the harder they tried, the less it worked. And I just hate it. I hate being controlled. I hated rules. I hate being told what to do. And I'm still that way to an extent. And a big part of it for me was I had super bad anxiety. I didn't realize I was on the spectrum, and I wanted to self medicate that anxiety because I hated it. I hated feeling that way. I didn't recognize it for what it was because it was my normal. But all I did know was when I was drinking or especially doing opiates, I felt better. And of course, I wanted to do that more. But of course, my parents were more like the police officers. They were trying to lasso me in. And the more they tried to do that, the less it worked. Other versions of them, though, do the more parentification route. That wasn't necessarily what happened to me, though. I have seen that dynamic, absolutely. My dynamic was the more controlling dynamic. My dynamic was what Linkin Park's Numb was about. And when he says, every step that you take, or every step that I take is another mistake to you, and can't you see that you're smothering me, holding too tightly, afraid to lose control? That's what I relate to in what he was saying. It reminds me of my version of toxic narcissistic parents. Other people have a different version, but that was the version that I could relate to, if that makes sense. I'm also going to tell the people on Instagram here to come on over and join me on the live. What do you do when the bully narcissist acts like a know-it-all? Um, that would be very off-putting to me as well, but I would just let it go because those are the kinds of people that they just never let it go. I got in a little bit of a debate with someone today. We were going over narcissistic traits, and I have a pet peeve where my threshold to consider someone having narcissistic traits is higher, where I look at the DSM and I see, okay, an excessive need for admiration, a lack of empathy, exploitation, a sense of entitlement, fantasies of power, brilliance, money, or success. And that's what I think of when I think of narcissistic traits. And a lot of people are saying, no, 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 everyone has narcissistic traits. And I don't think that serves anyone to say that because the way that narcissists have narcissistic traits, it's not even in the same league as the normal person. And other people are trying to say, it's normal to have a sense of self importance. Everyone should have some healthy narcissism. To which I said, Dr. George Simon believes there is no such thing as healthy narcissism, for one. Narcissism, by definition, is an unhealthy relationship with yourself. And that's his opinion. There are other professionals that believe there is a healthy narcissism. I choose not to think so, though. I think, sure, people can be selfish. Sure, people might be sensitive to criticism. Or sure, they can do toxic behaviors or maybe lie. But I wouldn't call that a narcissistic trait. To me, a trait is more pronounced and more inherently a part of who someone is. I think when many people say they have narcissistic traits or everyone has narcissistic traits, what they mean is anyone can do toxic behaviors. But my point in bringing this up is I was going back and forth with this person, and she refused to listened to my interviews with Dr. Salerno. She refused to read his books, and she was just kind of closed-minded about it. And then she kind of came at me, oh, you disagree with me on this one thing? It means you must not know anything you're talking about, because it's a proven fact that everyone has narcissistic traits. It's like, huh? Yes, Bear. Narcissism, full-blown NPD. They're learning they can literally have different brains, less gray matter in the prefrontal cortex. And that's part of the reason they have the impaired empathy. Now, to the degree they have impaired empathy might vary, but that's one of the big reasons. And a big reason is, and this is my philosophy towards it now, I think there's a genetic operating system that occurs where you have that inherent genetic trait. You now have that narcissistic operating system. And when you have that narcissistic operating system, that means you have that limited gray matter in the prefrontal cortex, and it means you're operating in a different way than normal people. Now, I think that's different, though, than people that maybe that they have been abused, and from environmental causes, they can maybe appear to act narcissistic. But if they don't have that inherent genetic trait, I don't think they can get as bad as someone who does have that inherent genetic trait of narcissism. Now, that's just my opinion. There's no studies on that, but that's just me spitballing something that I think. Angela says, the real problem with narcissists is that they always want to put you beneath them. That's exactly right, because narcissists have hierarchical thinking. It's very important to them to be number one. It's very important to them to be superior, and that's why they have their feelings of grandiosity, and they're very competitive a lot of times. They don't like to lose. So you like that, Bear? That's something I kind of invented between my conversation with Dr. Salerno and Christian, is that I think there's a difference. That genetic trait can create the operating system, but environment can cause behavioral narcissism. And that's a distinction that Christian made too. And that's why he doesn't like the DSM model, 5 of 9 traits is NPD, because that's just behaviors. Behaviors is not the same as the operating system, because anyone can do some behaviors. And even as the DSM says, persistent and pervasive across many areas of life, sure, but how do you measure it? They're only measuring that via behaviors. And within that context, people can get it wrong. And an interesting thing that he said was he doesn't believe that narcissism and borderline can be comorbid, because he thinks they are at odds with one another. And that's something I'll bring up with Dr. Salerno too the next time I speak with him. But I know what he's saying. He's saying that a borderline operating system and a narcissistic operating system both can't be present at the same time. Now, what you can have, though, is narcissistic behaviors and a borderline operating system, but there's generally got to be one operating system that is in charge, that is more influencing what is going on. And I can see that. I can see that for sure. And that's something I'm going to run by with Dr. Salerno in a few weeks when I talk to him again. But what else? What else was I talking about? Oh, so the narcissistic traits. Yeah, and I just don't like it. I think people say that. A lot of narcissists, they try to say, oh, everyone has narcissistic traits, because they're trying to do a couple things. They're trying to make it seem like everyone is guilty. They're trying to minimize how bad they are by making other people feel guilty as well. And overall, they're trying to kind of deflect a little bit as well and say, we're all guilty, so I'm not that much worse than you. Meanwhile, they're never going to admit they're narcissistic anyway, but that's what I see them do. And I think it just does a disservice to say everyone is narcissistic, because it's just not even in the same league. It's just night and day different. It's night and day different. Someone who is truly on the spectrum of narcissism has NPD versus someone that might be a little bit selfish from time to time. Not even close to the same. Angela says, do you think that normal and healthy men and women can just be friends? A lot of men think that it's not possible. I think it's possible, but I also think, I mean, I have women that are friends, but I also think a lot of times one person does wind up wanting more. Sometimes that one person is the woman. Sometimes that one person is the man. Often that one person is the man. But I've had women friends that ended up liking me. So the way it works the best is if there's no attraction there. If there's no attraction, I can see that relationship lasting longer. But if there's some attraction, a lot of times one person's going to want more, but it's always possible. It's definitely possible for a man and woman to be friends. Absolutely. Can if you have a good character. Yes. I mean, I would agree with that. Hands yellow, heart red. What expression does that? What's that one mean? If a man likes you, I don't think it's possible. Yeah, I mean, if a man wants more and he's socially not calibrated, he's going to make some blunders. And what that means is he's going to try to sleep with you. He's going to try to make a move, or he's going to maybe get butt hurt, or he's going to get jealous when the girl starts dating. And that's how you know. I mean, if a guy is going to be that guy, you just can't do it. You have to be honest with yourself. And I tell guys that all the time. If you like a woman, be honest with yourself. Don't just stay her friend if you wanted more, because now you're not being honest with her and you're not being honest with yourself either. You don't know either? But I agree, Angela. I mean, most men, if they really like the girl, they might try to play it along like they're friends, but ultimately they do want more. And I think as a guy, it just comes down to how much experience you have with women. I mean, I have a lot of experience with women and I'm okay with being friends with them. But I will also admit, if I'm really attracted to someone, I would probably want that. And I wouldn't like it if I was rejected. But if that person has a boyfriend, I can also respect that dynamic as well. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, some guys are just going to do that. And some guys aren't really going to be a good friend to a woman anyway. And there are some women that prefer male friends. And these are the women that say, well, other girls are just so much drama. There's so much drama and chaos and they're catty. And I like being friends with guys. And sometimes those women, they just like all of the attention. They like the attention that these guys are giving them. They don't have any intention of dating them, but they keep them in that friend zone and they like that. That happens too, but every situation needs to be taken individually. Not every situation is going to be the same. It all comes down to the maturity level of each person in the relationship. And to bring it back to the topic here, some men, if they really want more and they get rejected, then they might pull the cry bully card. Yes, you're not wrong about that, Bear. You're definitely not wrong about that. Especially in the dating world, people are all over the place, let me tell you. But as I'm on here, if you guys just have any general questions about narcissism or dating, or maybe even current events or politics, let me know, because that's what these live streams are for. They're not just for keeping on the topic. The topic is just something to get the ball rolling, but then we take it from there. We can talk about any number of things. I'm posting to my Instagram story that I'm live here. So maybe some people, I'm not sure I'll be able to get them to come over, but maybe they will. Let's see. Also, there will be more video breakdowns coming up too, where I go over what other people are saying and doing. I think that always provides good learning opportunities, whether I go over a current event story or other YouTubers and their content. I think that's good material to bounce off of, if that makes sense. There we go. So what else do I have going on here? Yeah, I like that. Whoever my brain is on empty today. Hey, that happens sometimes. Sometimes we got to give ourselves a little bit of a break. And it's hard for me to do it too because I can be obsessed with making content and videos. And the most difficult thing for me to do sometimes is to say, stop, don't do anything, do nothing, take a break. And then when I take a break, I can actually be more productive when I come back, but it can be super difficult to take a break. What is a trad wife? That's a very good question. A trad wife to me isn't necessarily conservative, but a trad wife is someone that is more involved with gender roles. And maybe that means the woman's going to do more like cooking, maybe, for example, and the man's going to be taking on more of a provider role, and the woman's going to be more of a mother and taking care of kids. That's kind of what I think when I think of trad wife. I think of someone who's more rooted in gender roles and they just kind of own that. And I mean, I don't have a problem with that. I don't really have a problem with anything that works for people. Where everybody always loses me, whether it's spirituality or religion or politics, is when they all think that their one way is the right way for everyone. And so many people think that, but I don't think that. I think people got to do what's best for them. And that's why I've never fallen neatly into a Republican box or a Democrat box or a libertarian box because I'm not with any of them 100%. I'm just not. Ellie says, because I am sick. Yeah, how's your throat feeling? Well, I'm glad you're here. Angela says, narcissists aren't interested in relationships. They only want a puppet. Yes. Narcissists want to use someone and exploit someone to feed their image of grandiose superiority. They want narcissistic supply. And they want someone to make their image look good. That's what they want. Oh, well, that's no good. Did you get a COVID test? Or is it strep throat? Or do you know? Oh, you better believe it, Angela. I've had a couple narcissistic girlfriends. I've had one, the one who really woke me up. She's the one that I really loved that girl. And, but granted, I was getting ahead of myself too. I just wasn't used to a narcissistic woman doing that. I wasn't used to someone who looked like everything I always wanted being just like the Disney fantasy and blowing my head up and telling me that like it was just perfect. I wasn't used to that. And so when she did that, it was a super attractive Brazilian girl and she was like 27 and I was 33 or ish, 32, 33. And I fell head over heels. And looking back on it now, it wouldn't happen to me now because I'm a little more cynical, but I'm also a little more wise and mature as well. But I fell for her. And then she just kind of fell off and it turned into me making more out of it than it really was. But I was devastated because women don't normally do that. Women don't normally love bomb you like that, tell you how awesome and amazing you are, and then be like the woman of your dreams, only to basically turn it off and on and go straight to devalue discard and leave you hanging in the dust. It's pretty brutal when they acted that love bombing and future faking way in the beginning, only for them to get extremely cold and callous and ghost you for a while. Now, the ghosting wouldn't last forever. She'd always come back, but it was brutal. But that's what woke me up to it. That situation woke me up. Why are there only 3 boxes? Oh, I mean, there's more boxes than 3. That's just the 3 you hear of: conservative, or excuse me, Republican, Democrat, Libertarian. Even amongst Democrat, there's subdivisions, right? There's corporate Democrat, there's progressive, there's leftists, there's tankies. Bear says, my therapist has COVID. LOL, she texted me today. Well, that's not good. And then I've also dated a borderline before. And if you want to hear about my experience with a narcissistic woman, one of my more popular solo videos is what it's like dating a female covert narcissist. The video's got like 17,000 views. So I shared my story. It's probably from 5 years ago now. So that's one of the videos there. Allie says, I'm disgusted when someone gaslights me. As you should. It is very off-putting. I mean, there's no getting around it. Angela says, I was approached by narcissistic guys, but I have never chosen those guys. I'm 43 years old and I have never had a boyfriend. What do you think of people in their 40s who never had a boyfriend like me? What do I think? I mean, I wouldn't judge it just by that. What would I think about that person if they've never had a boyfriend? I mean, does that mean you're a virgin too? I don't know if that's too personal, but I would think it's maybe a little bit odd, and I would think not very common. And I guess some of it would be what the reason why is. Like, why is it the case? Is it because of religious purposes, or you're just not into them? I mean, I wouldn't really judge it that harshly. I would think it's like, oh, well, that's interesting, and certainly not the norm. And then the other thing I did was I said what it's like dating a borderline woman. And then I did a 3-part series on that. What it's like dating. But what are your goals, Angela? I believe in soulmates and Prince Charming. I'm also a Christian. Am I crazy? No, I think it's actually kind of adorable that someone can believe in soulmates and can save themselves and not just fall to every man that gives them attention. I think that says a lot about someone's character. It takes a lot of integrity and character and the ability to be alone to do that. Now, do I believe in soulmates? I don't think I believe in one soulmate. I think my definition of a soulmate is, and I think there can be many, but it's the person that helps you to become the most you can be and forces you to grow the most as a person, keeping in mind not all growth is comfortable. Alex, how are you? What were the main differences between the borderline and narcissist that you dated? Good question. So the borderline, and there was 2 of them. One was kind of more comorbid with narcissism, but the first one was She had more mood disorder and addiction issues, and they were right on the surface. And she was maybe more as societal, we'll say, and she struggled with addiction issues. And so her issues are more clear and present. This is the borderline. You can see issues because they're honest with them and they fully acknowledge what they have as well. The borderline told me that she had borderline. So there was no guesswork. She was just diagnosed as it. And then I observed it. And my whole thing was, and this is what I said before, I was in the situation, and this is also years ago, but I thought at the time I was healthier than I was. Because if I really was as healthy as I thought I was, I probably wouldn't have been there to begin with. But so she had all the issues on the surface. The narcissistic woman, not as easy to tell. Like her issues were a little more subtle. And they have like a childlike quality to them. The covert narcissist had a childlike quality where there's something kind of surreal about it in a different way, where they don't seem maybe mature, but it wouldn't be like mean or abrasive, but it just didn't seem mature. And the borderline had a childlike quality about them too. Like some of them can kind of seem helpless, which as a man can make you want to try to save them or rescue them or take care of them. It kind of touches on that instinct a little bit, where a man, if he has that protecting and providing instinct, the borderline woman can trigger it and say, oh yes, she's acting so helpless. She's acting like there's nothing that can be done for her. And for me, as a problem solving type guy, a guy who's a helping guy, I wanted to fix it. I wanted to really help her out. But there's a fatal flaw in doing that. It's one thing doing that as a coaching business. It is a completely different thing doing that in a romantic relationship. You should not be doing that in a romantic relationship. In a romantic relationship, you should be more on equal ground emotionally. You should be on equal ground maturity-wise, or at least pretty close. If you're not, that's not a good sign. You can't do much with it if you're not on equal ground. Coaching, counseling, therapy, that's a whole different ballgame. This doesn't apply to that. But in a romantic world, yeah, you shouldn't be trying to fix your romantic partner. You shouldn't be trying to rescue them, because the only person that can rescue someone is themselves. But that's what borderlines specialize at. They are experts at getting people to try to rescue them, or they paint themselves as the damsel in distress. Now, not all borderlines, though. There can be some pretty mean borderlines, too. Don't get me wrong. And I've come across them on TikTok as well. Angela, I'm an economist, and I work in finances, and I love God and the stock market. What are your stock picks, Angela? I'm a Bitcoin kind of guy. My friend told me about NVIDIA years ago, and I didn't do it. And I'm mad that I didn't. Bear says, you should go after a guy you truly like. Don't wait on life to happen to you. I would agree with that, because you can wait your whole life and the perfect circumstance may never come up. I met borderlines who acted childlike. Oh, you met. Yes, I could see that for sure. Because they can act like they're younger than they are, and it can trigger an instinct in people to kind of save them. And male borderlines have the same thing. They have this kind of angelic, childlike quality that some women might even be tempted to try to take care of them and mother them. And we know that happens with narcissistic guys too, but for a different reason. A lot of times narcissistic guys will use weaponized incompetence to get what they want. I wouldn't call what borderline men do weaponized incompetence. It might truly be more incompetence, just not weaponized. I hope you find a good wife, Jared. Pray for me too. I definitely will, Angela. I definitely will. You hate Bitcoin and crypto, Jared. That's a red flag for me, Jared. Narcissists love Bitcoin. Watch out. You can't judge all of the Bitcoin people. I mean, if I would have just invested in Bitcoin back in 2018, maybe you wouldn't be hearing from me right now. But that's why I say I was kind of very disappointed I didn't make a fortune in crypto. But I try to remember life happens for me, not to me. And maybe it was meant to be that way. And so, what's the opportunity in the fact that that happened? Old Bear. So, you have Bear and Old Bear. That's pretty cool. After being in an MPD marriage for 30 years and now being free, I find myself not wanting to get into another relationship. And that's totally normal. I think that's totally fine, especially if you were married for 30 years. I mean, it'll take you a while to get over being single again. You'll probably enjoy being single for a while. Yeah, yeah, I will say there are certainly what I would consider some covert narcissists in the crypto space. I've had some fights with them. They're covert. It's not as many grandiose ones. They're more slick and slippery. And that's a video to look out for tomorrow. I got a video titled "The Slippery Covert Narcissist." Crypto is smart. What would have been smart is if I would have just put in every cent that I put into crypto into Bitcoin in 2018 and just kept it there. Probably pretty close to a millionaire if I did. But hindsight's 2020. I can say that now because I know what happened. But at the time in 2018, people didn't think that's what was going to happen. People thought Bitcoin was already too high and they were trying to gamble on altcoins. I want a man who hates Bitcoin like me. They're out there. Jim Cramer was one of them. Or what's the other dude's name? Not Peter Thiel. There's another dude on X who's always hating on Bitcoin. I ran into a covert narcissist a couple hours ago. Guy's a weirdo and tried stealing my personality. Trying to mirror you, huh? Yeah, that can be, once you see it, that is pretty repulsive. Bear says, what if Jared asked you out, Angela, and you missed the boat because of Bitcoin? Ah, a very good hypothetical there, Bear. Let's see what she says. Old Bear says, I went hard on Sol and made a decent return. I had some money in Sol last year too. And if I just would have put all my money in Sol, I'd be rocking and rolling as well. But instead, I had my money. I just didn't think Solana was going to keep on going up. And I made some money, but I thought the money was to be made elsewhere, which is another blunder. Because the dude who ran FTX, the heck's his name? The scandal dude. I forget his name. But that's what he said. He said, put all your money in Sol. That's what's going to moon this cycle. And he was right. What the heck was his name? What was the heck the guy's name that was the FTX scam? Sam Bankman-Fried. Angela says, my soulmate doesn't like Bitcoin. He isn't a gambler. But Angela, you have to admit the stock market's a bit of a gamble too. And even Bitcoin, I don't think, is as much of a gamble anymore. I mean, hasn't Bitcoin proved itself? I think altcoins are more of a gamble, but not Bitcoin. I mean, Bitcoin, there's only going to be 21 million coins mined. The last one will be mined in 2050 something. And I think it's just a matter of time before Bitcoin gets to 1 million. And it's at 110 now. So that's almost a 10x. It's just a matter of how long it takes to get there. Alex says, yeah, I caught on to the mirroring and was repulsed. What a weirdo. Yeah, very good. Smart. Girl. Old Bear, Solana took a ton of hate. Yes, the coins that are hated generally do well. Ripple was hated, and what did it do? It did really well. ADA was kind of hated, and what did it do? It did really well. I used to be more of a crypto junkie, but the more I did well with social media, the more I kind of gravitated out of it. Angela says, I don't love money. I want a man with integrity. Bitcoin doesn't have any value. Well, it has the promise to pay. That's what a dollar is, right? The dollar is a promise to pay. And it's backed by what? The dollar is backed by not the gold standard anymore. The dollar reserve, the petrodollar, maybe. Bear says stock is a big gamble, and I would agree. Not as much as some altcoins, but still a gamble. Old Bear says, my divorce starts on Tuesday, and I am finally really happy. Breaking that trauma bond was the hardest thing I've ever done. And yes, I believe that. I definitely believe that. Especially one that lasted 30 years. Totally. I mean, that's a long time. Bitcoin has much value as everyone sees in it, same as the dollar or gold. I agree with you, Old Bear. I agree with that. Angela won't agree with this, but I agree with that. And because that's what people said about Bitcoin in the very beginning. People said, it's fake money. That's internet money. That's going to be just like the tulips in Amsterdam or Holland. Well, the people that didn't listen to that, they're laughing to the bank now. But if they listened, they could have still made out in other things, but Bitcoin's done pretty damn good. And that money is very real. Like the money you cashed out of Bitcoin, very real. Very real, and has changed very real lives. And it's given people life-changing money in some cases too. Ooh, talking can make me thirsty. Proud of you, Old Bear. So, Angela, what I would say is you wouldn't want to miss your soulmate just because they like Bitcoin. It's like the parable of the flood when the guy's on the roof and there's a flood, and then a person in a canoe comes by. Hey, I'm here to save you. And the guy says, no, God's going to save me. And then a guy in a sailboat comes. Hey, I'm here to save you. No, God's here to save. God's going to save me. Then a guy in a helicopter comes. Hey, I'm here to save you. No, God's going to save me. And then the guy drowns and dies. And then the guy says, God, why didn't you save me? And he says, what are you talking about? I sent you a canoe, a sail ship, and a helicopter. What more did you want from me? So God helps those who also helps themselves. So my point was, there could be someone good, and they're not all narcissists that like Bitcoin. Not all of them. Old Bear says, my whole life, he took the majority of my life and he knew it. To find out the person you loved so insanely was simply playing you is a crazy thing to wake up to. Well, perhaps that's why she's here, so we can kind of nudge her in that direction. But again, I mean, if someone wants to be single, that's fine too. I'm single. But it's all about what people want. Like if someone wants someone and wants the relationship and you're not getting what you want, well, maybe it's time to reflect a little bit. And sometimes impatience can always be a thing too. Patience is always a thing. Patience is a virtue, as they say. I've looked back on 3 decades of memories. I could write a book. Hey, I know a lot of people who are writing books after their experience with a narcissist. My friend Kelly, she's in the middle of writing a trilogy. She's writing her first one now. And when she's done, I'm going to invite her on so she can promote the book again. I've talked to her a few times now, but she's a good friend of mine. And I think many of the people that follow me would also like her. Yeah. I mean, it's very cathartic for the person even writing it, just getting it all on paper. It's a big part of healing work. I think there's something magical that happens when you write things down and let it out. It's kind of shedding the trauma in a way, I would like to think. And I think it helps. It's, yeah, very similar to journaling, and it's similar to how EMDR can help heal trauma. I think writing and doing things like that can do it too. I think there's more than one way. There's more than one way to heal trauma. Alex says narcissists are so crazy to deal with. Definitely book worthy stories, almost unbelievable. And you're absolutely correct about that. If I didn't know them and I didn't hear 1,000 stories about them because of what I do, there would be things that I wouldn't believe. I would think, no, that just doesn't happen. But when you're in this, then you know it does happen. You know there's all sorts of things that happen. And I've lived a life where I've seen that in many elements. I've seen it because of the addiction world. I've seen it because of the taxi world. I've seen it because of the mental illness world. And I've seen it because of the narcissism world. There's all sorts of things that others probably wouldn't believe. Do it. I'll read it. Bring her for sure. Yeah, I'm going to have her on. Yeah, it's wild when you find out your relationship marriage was a lie. Yeah, that's one of those brutal truths that it's very painful acknowledging it, but it's a very pivotal point in your healing because once you see it and then you truly accept it, then you can move forward. Alex says, if I didn't go through it, I'd think it's an exaggeration or something else, but now I'd believe just about anything. Yes, and I'm right there with you on that. Old Bear says, being able to journal has helped me tremendously. It has also helped me to take off my rose colored glasses. Being able to read the hell he was putting me through helped me so much. Yes, all true. Definitely all true. And I definitely recommend anyone journal, or at the very least, write down if they're still in the middle of a trauma bomb. Write down all of the awful ways they have treated you. That way, if you're tempted to go back, refer back to that list. Oh, yeah, this is what they did to me. This is what they called me. This is what they lied to me about. This is that they cheated or they did these addictions or fill in the blank with whatever it was. That's very helpful because when people are in the middle of that trauma bond, their strength can waver, their resolve can waver, and they can be tempted to go back. And it's just like a drug in that case. The trauma bond is just like an addiction because it works on the same parts of the brain that gambling works on, the intermittent rewards. Old Bear says, I feel crazy just telling people what he's done. It makes me sound crazy because what he's done said is so unbelievable. No, I believe it, Old Bear. There's nothing I wouldn't really believe in this day and age. Old Bear, what are you most excited about your new life? That's a very good question. It's a very good question. Let's see what she says. I know for me, it would be, just having a happy, healthy life. And I think there's a new, there's a higher ceiling that can happen when you get to a healthy place. You can really have some magical relationships that are also healthy. That's definitely a thing. But that doesn't necessarily happen if someone isn't in a good spot, or they're emotionally immature, or they're still hooked on their ex. It doesn't happen in that case. But once you get to a good place, then it can happen. And then you can have some pretty awesome relationships. And that doesn't mean they're going to last forever. I don't necessarily think that's the only metric of a happy relationship is, oh, it lasts forever. But I think people can come into your life for seasons. Old Bear's answer is being by myself, having the freedom to do what I want, wear what I want, talk to whoever I want, have friends. I have an amazing support system that have been here for me during my healing. Yes, and living alone is so peaceful, by the way. Yes. Yes, I love that. Like I said, especially since you were there for 30 years, that's a long time. Old Bear, yeah, I think they bank on people not believing their targets. Yes, it definitely helps when people don't believe the targets, the victims. That definitely helps. It gives them some plausible deniability, gives them some cover. I can cook the foods I want. I'm finally out from under his dark cloud. And that's a good example there that when they start questioning, bombarding you, oh, why are you wearing that? Or why are you going over this person's house? Why are you cooking that? That's an indicator that something's not quite right. And Cece and I were talking about that. I was going through that video again, my interview with her, and she specifically mentioned that very thing you just mentioned. Amen, Bear. Amen. Amen. Say it again. Bing. Well, I'll give a little recap of the cry bully thing here too. So the recap is a cry bully is simply someone that plays the victim in a situation that they created. And narcissists will clearly do this a lot. They'll do this if they've been caught cheating or they get in trouble with the law. They'll act like they didn't do anything to get in trouble. They just got in trouble out of nowhere because people were out to get them. And it's a really obnoxious routine for them to play. Old Bear says, I wasn't allowed to have friends, any friends. I couldn't go to the grocery store without one of our children with us. I was faithful for what that whole time. He was the one cheating. And that's a very common story. Where if you were to ever match their actions, it would be the end of the world. And you were micromanaged while they have total freedom. Pretty obnoxious, right? But you're free now. Free at last, as Martin Luther King Jr. would say. Free, free at last. And now the sky's the limit. There's no limit to what you can do now. And that's the cool thing about it. And that's something to think about too, to picture your ideal life and think, okay, what do I want my ideal life to be like? And you break it down. Okay, my relationships with myself, friends, family, a significant other if I choose, my mental health, my physical health, my spiritual health, my emotional health, my hobbies. What else? My career, financials, all of those. And it starts also with your mindset, and if you struggle with any addictions, those are things to tackle first. Bless them. Absolutely, Alex. I had recordings of some of arguments, circular conversations, the insane stuff he would say, but he would take my phone and delete so much evidence I had. Yeah, that's not good. But it's good you had evidence, but it's not good that they deleted it. Yeah. I'm very happy to hear that you're out because it's always sad to hear when people are stuck and people get stuck and they're trapped for various reasons. So it's always great when I can see people get out like you. Hey, simple. Simple is best, Bear. Nothing wrong with being more easily content. That's one way to get a happier life. Be content with less. In America, people usually do the opposite. They want more, 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 more. But to be content with less, now that's a good way to go about it. That usually works pretty well. But all right, I started this one a little bit later than I would have liked, like I said. And I'm normally going to start these a little bit sooner. And I might be interviewing my friend Gina coming up here soon. She's a cancer survivor, and she came from a pretty dysfunctional family. She had a, we'll say, narcissistic mother who recently passed away from cancer, father still alive, but she also had a bunch of, we'll say, narcissistic sisters. And the narcissistic sisters would kind of treat her like Cinderella. And it was a fiasco. And we're going to go over that dynamic. And then she's also had toxic boyfriends too. Old Bear, he still does absolutely everything he can to make my life difficult. It's impossible to co-parent. How old are your kids? And they will. That's what they'll do. They'll try to make life as difficult as possible for you. They'll try to be a headache. And their goal is just to get to you. Thank you, Ellie. I'll be looking for that comment too on the Christian interview. Yeah, the co-parenting with them is one of the most difficult things because they try to do everything they can to just be ridiculous. And it's a headache. No ifs, and, or buts about it. But all right, everyone. I'm going to rock and roll here. And I'll be back again soon. Like I said, minimum 3 lives a week you can expect from me. And I'm going to do my best to bring people over as well from Facebook, Instagram, maybe even TikTok. And if anyone of you know people that you think might find this interesting too, by all means, tell them about it. Bring them on board. There's a nice flock of black sheep here. Our youngest just turned 18, but the 2 boys still live at home in my state. Child support is until 19 or longer if the kid is in college. Okay. Thank you for being Ellie. 10-4 Bear. And Old Bear, hope to see you back here as well. But yeah, there's at least they're not as young, but I'm sure he's going to make every decision difficult, even though your kids are older as well. And then it's just going to be how you deal with it from there. But all right, I'm going to rock and roll, everybody. You all have a great evening, and I'll be back again soon. And next time, invite some friends along. And like the video too, if you haven't already. You got it, Old Bear and Bear.